Welcome everyone to this product talk series by Pragmatic Leaders. We are glad to see you all here. And secondly, thanks a lot, Vaibhav, for joining us today in this session. We are glad to see you here as well. And thanks a lot for taking out time on Sunday evening and uh, giving us an opportunity to host you today. Guys, I would like to give a little brief about Vaibhav before we begin. Vaibhav is a product leader with 10 plus years of experience in building products. He is currently working with Booking.com. He is handling ML products for security with Booking. He's based out of Amsterdam. In the past, he has worked with some amazing startups. He has built some amazing brands in payments, education, and e-commerce domain from scratch and scaled them. So yeah, so this was a little intro about him. Vaibhav, I would like you to take the session forward from him.
Thanks, Piyush. I think I'm audible now and my screen must be visible.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Thanks for the introduction and thanks for actually reaching out for letting me share my experience and learnings, especially on the topic that I believe is critical to every product manager, product sense. Well, in fact, before I start, I would just put one question through. I mean, what is it that it actually takes to build a really innovative and useful product? Sometimes even industry-defining product. And if we were to like say all should develop one skill that allows us to do so to create really awesome products, then there could be many answers. So there could be intelligence, it could be the right opportunity, you need an amazing team, sometimes even common sense. But for most of the product managers, that all translates into something that we call as product sense. So hi, everyone. Good morning and good evening, depending on wherever you are in the world right now. A brief about me. As Piyush just said, I'm Vaibhav. I've spent around 10 years in product management and development as a software developer, product manager, and even then as an entrepreneur. Currently, I create machine learning products at Booking.com to to improve or to enhance the experience of customers and partners that are on our platform. A little about Booking.com. It is one of the world's largest OTAs or online travel agent, something similar to Make My Trip in India, and we do it for almost all the geographies across the globe. So that's it. Prior to this, I have worked with a number of companies, including Xiaomi. I was in China and my own startup based out of New Delhi at some point in time. And we were trying to create financial services products, so something that allows you to make digital payment, draw out digital loans, and all of those things. So we were doing that, and I think the great deal of what I've learned is out of these companies and the startup that I had for myself. Well, I guess it's good to start. A brief on what is the agenda for the day. I would try to cover or at least introduce what is product sense, why is it critical to product managers, what role does customer and data play, and how do we actually as product management professionals and also as aspiring product managers tend to develop these skills. If I do have the luxury of time, I would want to touch upon the topic of how to demonstrate this specific skills in product management interviews, probably as part of the Q&A. So what is indeed product sense? I did speak, say a sentence, but then what in true sense is actually product management? So if this was to be put into one sentence that covers almost all aspects of product sense, is it's a strong intuition that a product manager carries, which is developed or derived from experience, data, and customer obsession. So if you put these three things, customer centricity, backed by data, and a lot of experience of working on actual products is what constitutes product sense. I mean, normally people think of senses as, the or the audible auditory senses. People are born with these senses. Unlike those, product sense is a skill that can actually be acquired. So it's though it is a sense, it is a skill. So also good to mention is that a product sense is probably one skill that differentiate great product managers from good product managers. A quick summary. on what actually, if you really have to, start, uh, start making product sense as part of your personality trait, or part of your, list of attributes, then these three things. So if all, I'm a big Marvel movie fan. I mean, at least I used to be, and now there are no more. And Spider-Man had this amazing spidey sense, and that would allow that person to actually sense certain challenges, certain problems in vicinities happening. It is something similar to that spidey sense. So product managers often, come upon problems that do not have defined contours. They do not have very clear, why, or very clear vision in terms of what is expected. So product managers should be able to, or product sense lets you map the abstract problem into something definite. So a quick example on this. I believe many of you must be aware, and must be also following Elon Musk. And probably the only good thing that happened in 2020 so far is the two folks that were sent to the space station. SpaceX did that. So on that front, just think of it. At certain point in time, Elon would have thought, the Earth is really getting warmer. The climate is really changing. It's really going to be difficult for humans to live here. What do we do? I mean, what are our options actually? Let's reverse this entire cycle. Let's, stop the emissions, stop a number of things. But he realized that's difficult. What else? So if this all really gets worse, what is it that we're going to do? Should we just flee this planet and go to Mars? Okay, looks like a feasible option. Now, if we got to go to Mars, so which means we really need to leave this planet. How do we do that? The answer was simple here: rockets. But the challenge is it's too many of us, and rockets are expensive. So from this huge idea of it's going to be difficult to live on this planet, to be able to come down to the point where you say, we need to make cheaper rockets. This is probably, what happened. And this is what product managers need to do. They really need to map this abstract problem statement or abstract pain points that customers have, and transform them into something really definite, something that can be attempted in terms of solving. So now a very interesting thing is, after you've done this mental exercise, you arrive at something that is, let's solve this. So now you got to solve making cheaper rockets, but then how do you go about it? And is it something that can happen over the time? No. Then you apply frameworks, and you apply teams, and you apply your resources to solve it over and over, which I mean is an iterative process to be able to come up with solutions. So Microsoft, for example, when the company was founded, its vision was something around, we want to have a personal computer on every desk and in every home. Today, that vision has translated into something that we want to empower, people and organization to be able to do more or to achieve more. But the point is, something as abstract as to be able to bring computer when computers only were limited to just labs, to bring them to every home, to bring them to every office, is something visionary to the extent of being abstract. They made it definitive, and here we are. Why is actually this skill, or I mean, there are many skills. I see, we need to be agile, so we need to understand how to execute day on to day. We need to be customer focused. But then why, if I were to say there is one critical skill, product sense, to product managers, why is it that every product manager cannot do without having a product sense? It's because product sense is one thing, as I just said, it differentiates great product managers from good product managers, but also product managers in general. It keeps them, it makes them a line apart. So it also differentiates them from simple project managers, people who are executing things and making things happen. But then product managers are the people who define what really should happen, and product sense is a key critical skill to be able to be in that role and be effective. A really great quote from United States 34th president. I really read it every now and then, and it resonates pretty well in these times. So it says, in preparing for battle, I've always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. So you would make plans, and it would change. They would definitely change. The reason, because business priorities change every day in, day out. As I just said, Microsoft started with desktops or PCs, computers, and today they're doing a number of things. So business plans and business priorities change. Your landscape, your social, economic, and political landscape around you change, and therefore your business needs to adapt. Like, take an example. We are living in a pandemic, and the way everything is happening, for example, this very presentation is happening entirely different. Had it been 2019, we would be doing this the other way. So definitely everything changes. And at the last, as a part of this, as a product manager, your roadmap should actually be able to respond to those change, should be able to adapt, and should be able to reflect those changes in your planning. So your plans are going to be changing. Your resources are going to be changing. Technology around is going to be changing. Then what is it that needs to stay exactly the way it is, so that the end goal or the business goal is met every single time, irrespective the factors change or not? That is the key skill, product sense. So if you have a specific way of approaching problems, specific way of understanding customer pain points, and a specific thinking of a structured way of creating solutions, that is going to make sure that the business is a success at the end of the day, or the product or the feature is a success at the end of the day, despite a number of factors they may change. And there are countless examples when companies fail in trying to do so. Before I just read this out, I would just take an example. Think of it that what is it that Kodak, for example, was trying to solve for their customers? Were they actually trying to solve, how easier it is to capture photographs and print them and keep them? I believe they were trying to solve, memories. They were trying to address evidences. So they were trying to create a product that helps people, keep memories, to help people give a visual representation to the memories that they hold true. And this problem could have been solved in thousands of different ways, but then it should have always evolved. They didn't, and we know where we are. So talking of this, all product managers typically face a number of challenges. A number of challenges across different times when they are managing a product, when they're in concept phase to when they're running a specific company, or they're enhancing features for a very mature product. I'm talking specific to product sense, when you're in ideation and you're approaching, understanding the problem. These are the specific problems that typical product managers face. So all guns fired on ideas without validations. So people have a tendency in business to really have ideas, and that's what keeps businesses going. But they have a tendency of coming up with new ideas every day. And then as a response, the teams jump onto building products or features on those ideas. What actually happens when such a thing happens? The product actually becomes a feature factory, and a feature factory that is not solving any specific problem, but has literally everything that the customer would have wanted. So it's like executing ideas without making sure that what you're trying to achieve will actually solve the problem that the customer cares about, or the pain point that the customer is having. That is the one big problem that so many people do. We will come to a couple of examples when such things are done, what kind of products result into. Before that, I would touch upon the second point, that is business proxying customers. So many businesses that try to create amazing products and features and may not have the luxury to speaking to the customers. There a number of times you keep listening empathy and overused and abused word. So they talk about empathy, they talk about slipping into customer shoes or putting on the customer's hat. They are good to hear. I mean, and I'm a big fan of empathy. I mean, I use that term. They're really good to hear, but I'm sorry, nothing replaces the actual customer story. Nothing replaces the actual customer pain point. And I would like to think of the customer here as the child. So if you were a first-time parent, or when our parents would be the first-time parents, we would be hungry, we would be feeling heat, we would be feeling wet, but we would never say that, right? We would be crying. So it was for our parents, who were then our product managers, to actually figure out what is it that we wanted. So you really can't ask the customer what they want. You have to just understand what they want. There is a lot of data that customer will be giving out, but then you have to clearly have the intention and the intent to be able to listen to that data and understand that data. So business teams proxying customers, definite no-go. So as a product manager, if you are trying to develop a product sense, don't be the customer. The customer is the customer. The best you can do is, you could understand a lot part of it, but then understand a customer is a customer. You can be as close as them, but then again, you can never replace them or never replace their story. The remaining two I wouldn't touch upon, because attempting to perfecting in beta version is clearly addressed by a very useful product model. It's called the MVP, or the minimum viable product. And saying yes and no, literally no no's or less no's, leads you in a situation where your product has everything, but none of them solves customer pain points. So a way to avoid by becoming a feature factory. So yeah, so now that we sort of understand what product sense is, why it is critical to product managers, and also I've touched upon customer and the kind of data, or how you should sense the data. I would just want to touch upon how important is it. So in the start of this entire presentation, I said it is of course about customer focus, and it is of course about customer centricity. But I really can't stress enough, at the end of the day, it is so critical part of this entire value chain that I would want to rather use the term customer obsession. If you're not obsessed with your customer, then you literally cannot deliver a product that business will really care about. I mean, customers definitely won't, but the businesses wouldn't care about. So the $1 billion question, I mean, it used to be $1 million, but we are in the world of unicorns, and a great idea with awesome execution can actually result in $1 billion idea. So what does the customer want is replaced by what does the customer really needs. So if we were to, I just said, if we were to ask the customer, they would, I mean, it's a really interesting example of Henry Ford, although he never said that quote, but then it's good to quote that if they'd asked the customer, they would have wanted faster horses. Although I feel that he had never said that, but it's so overused, but still drives the point home that you may ask the customer, but it doesn't literally mean asking. You literally have to look at data or understand data to be able to derive the customer's requirement. Let's just try and understand the relationship between customer and data in the light of product sense. So we these startups or any organization in general, we live in a sort of customer-centric universe. Like our solar system is a heliocentric, where sun is at the center and all the planets revolve around. So you just think customer as the sun at the center, and everything like your business metrics, your operational efficiencies, your revenues, everything goes around the customer in a circular fashion. And what is it that ties this customer with every other body? Is like sun and earth are tied, and all the other planets are tied with gravitation. So I would call data to be that force of gravity. And it goes without saying that customer has the highest gravity or highest data. So customer will be using a number of data points in a number of ways. I mean, you can look at their usage patterns. You can look at primary reports. You can look at the way they use your product or the way they hate your product. You can look at what reviews do they actually write on Play Store or on Amazon for your product. But at the end of the day, customer and data closely correlate. Also, before we just jump onto the next slide, which is pretty interesting, I would want to put one thing through data. There's a very, very fine difference between being data driven and between being data dripping. So you may be having a lot of data, but then if you are not understanding data in the light of what customer pain points are and what the business metric are, then you're literally moving nowhere. A good reference to make here is that in one of the decades, the correlation between the number of ice creams that actually sold in the United States actually to the 99% correlated to the number of murders that happened. They don't, of course, one is not the cause of the other or vice versa. So this is how business metric is. Data doesn't make sense if you actually are not metric driven. I'll go to the next slide, and because it's a remote presentation, but any guesses, what did the customer actually want in these product, and what it is that the product managers thought and then solved for? So these are a couple of funny products that actually were created, and some of them are still being sold, by the way. So pre-peeled bananas, they wanted to solve peeling or the pain of peeling bananas, and also they wanted to solve being more environment friendly by by just removing that waste part of the fruit. Think of it. So there was a goldfish walker that actually was created so that your pet goldfish can have fresh air, by the way. A rope-free skipping rope, which removes the problem of toppling over the rope, and it just misses the point that actually that rope is the incentive or the punishment so that you jump higher, which was the purpose of this entire product. And shoe umbrellas. So my point is that customer may want to protect their shoes, for example, from getting wet, or like what is next in this line, probably a wiper for eyeglasses. I've been wearing these glasses for almost like 2 decades now. And what is it? I mean, I definitely have a problem when I go out in the rains and then it all gets wet and visibility really is a challenge. But then if you would have asked me as a customer, I would say, I really can't see when the glasses are wet, and the result would have been a wiper for eyeglasses. But then some intelligent product manager who understood the actual pain points probably came up with something called the contact lenses. So product sense is what lets you derive that sort of innovation, which solves the pain point while understanding what the customer needs, not just listening to what the customer wants. So, I mean, a lot of introductions. I think the last critical part is how do you actually go about developing this product sense? And I would like to also add something. The presentations or the talks, rather, they are just ideas out of people like me or other product managers. But then they should serve as an inspiration to maybe read more and explore more, so that you can inspire yourself to apply. So I would want to share what I have read, practiced, and also explored into sort of a framework that which I sort of tried to create. So product sense. I mean, the entire product management, I would say, assembly line have all of these steps. Mind you, they look sequential steps, but everything is happening at the same time. So they are circular. They are iterative in a circular fashion. So you need to understand what goals are you chasing. So when I say you, it is not just you as a person, but also as a team, as a business. What are the goals that you are chasing, and what business metric you care about? So what are we trying to achieve? Are we trying to increase the DAUs or the daily active users? Are we trying to increase the monthly active users? Are we trying to retain the customers? Are we trying to monetize more customers? Are we trying to increase the number of subscriptions? So it is critical for any business or product manager to clearly identify and define a goal that they are trying to achieve when they create a feature, launch a new product, or make any improvement. The second thing, so goal is, I mean, when you listen to goal, it looks a lot business centric and a lot inclined towards what the business actually exists for. And therefore, we come to the second, but by far the most important part is users. So what is it that your user is defined as? Are they, so let's talk about Facebook. So if the goals were engagement, the likes, shares, comments, what is it that your user needs, and who actually are your users in first place? So you could have defined, one could have defined users as people who create content, a creator rather, a person who engage in content, so an engager. If there are videos, then a viewer. If there are opinion sharing, then someone who's helping others. So a number of users, typically speaking of personas, can be created and should be created for people that you're creating the product for. So who are your users, and then effectively what are their problems or what are their needs? So what is it that derives someone to be able to use a particular product in a specific way? Netflix, for example, have a really interesting way of recommending content. So the next time you open Netflix and on your home screen you find a different set of content, it's interesting to think then, what is it that is bringing this content to you? You certainly need them because you need to spend time, you need to get entertained, and then the need is pretty apparent. But then what it is that is leading to this curated content for you? Because somebody spent time to understand you as a user and understood your need to get entertained. And in this equation, they figured out that the content that you should be served should either be the content that is geographically relevant to you, should be the content that is language-wise relevant to you, could also be the content that you have searched by entering a specific keyword, could be latest for your geography, which people are watching of your age, your demography. So the user needs literally are the things, along with the user personas, that will translate into the next a list of solutions that you want to create. So think of this. I have a very interesting example for solutions. So in 1996, in India, Yellow Pages translated to a company called Just Dial, and they were digital, Yellow Pages. There was website, a number of things. It strikes me as something really, really amusing. What would have been the first iteration of this product, and what is it that they would have done? And if I vividly remember, as a kid in school and later in college, there was this, 888888 and 88 sort of phone number that would literally help you do that thing by the pick of a phone call. Now, how does it relate to product sense? Because somebody really understood that everything is changing and technology has changed heavily and tele infrastructure has grown massively. They got a number, they rode on the wave, and they made sure that the solution was available. And it was much later, I believe in 2007 or even much later, than they came up with a properly functioning website and a mobile app. But at the end of the day, what are your goals? What users are you serving? What are their user needs? And then what are your possible solutions? So somebody figured out that the one solution was to just get a number and put it there and put a team to be able to speak to the customers. So it's not always the most sophisticated solution. It's sometimes what solutions do you have and how do you prioritize? So are you solving at speed? Are you solving for accuracy? And then a number of things that will help you prioritize what problems should you solve, should you build, and then what solution should be the first one to come and why. So this is typically the product sense landscape where you address these questions where, what are you trying to achieve? What are your users? What are the problems? What do they need? And what are the possible solutions to address those problems? And at the end of the day, if you have the list, what is it that you're going to build first and why? There is also product execution, which takes us into the totally different sphere of understanding how to actually just build that. So I'll skip that for some other talk, or maybe for someone else's talk by Piyush. But on the last note, I would just say that these are the questions that are the guiding questions that a product manager must ask and try to answer. Specific use of Musk is that he's probably a very good example to understand how someone or a product manager like us can use first principle thinking and many other mental models to be able to sort of master this framework and then arrive at solutions in a very systematic fashion. Okay, I think I would stop here. I would thank you for being a kind audience to be able to listen to me peacefully. I would invite questions if you have any.
Thanks a lot, Vaibhav. We have few questions in our chat section.
I can just open that. Okay, I am able to see the chat. All right. Sorry, Shabuddin, I just see your point now.
No, that's okay.
Okay. So Shakti will ask, what kind of process available in collecting feedback for reading the data? So a number of things actually can help here. It can be as simple as just speaking with the customer. So just having phone interviews with customers, having group interviews with more than one customer, or even letting them fill forms. But what I found most effective to be able to address gathering customer feedback and data are where customers are not incentivized and are not persuaded to provide a specific kind of feedback. So one good source is, for example, if you have an app, one really good sources would be to see reviews of that product, see what the customers are actually saying. That is a really great source of feedback. Second is observing customers' usage. So I mean, there are a couple of different kinds of customers. There will be people who are using them and therefore have great feedback to make. There are potential customers you want to reach out who are not using, but who dropped off, but you really want to understand what is it that you can do to able to arrive or bring more of those customers into your space. So for existing customers, yes, reviews best. For customers who are using your product on a very high scale or a low scale, yes, using patterns, Google Analytics, any kind of analytics that you can do on your product helps. But for customers who really are, not so much into your product, the best way probably would be to actually speak to them. Speak to them, create forums, be part of forums where such customer segments exist, listen to them, understand what they are saying for your competitors' product, understand, because there are learnings there. So I would say my winner are rely on analytics that you can do on your product, which will capture the usage patterns, and very closely look to your reviews. I hope that answers, Shakti. So there's a question from Mohan, which says, can you tell us your experience in the challenge saying yes to no's? Also, what is the best way to say no to senior product management or CTOs or VP product, or even to the customers, with some example? Great question. Great question and tough question. So, so my experience of saying yes and no's, and I can actually speak on both sides of the story. When no's were said to me, and how did I feel, and when I was saying no's to really many senior people. In one of my experience, I was part of a startup, and we were building a digital customer lending product based out of New Delhi in India, and we were trying to address everyone. So I mean, if you're a student, you were our customers. If you are a businessman, you were our customers, and of course everybody in between as well. And we were trying to create a mobile and a web platform where it becomes really easy for you to apply for a loan and then get that money. At certain point in time, we could just see data that when you apply for a business loan, the business would gain a lot, because the the business loan application through a bank is really tough, and therefore there is real value for this customer. And when you apply for a retail loan, or as a student loan or something else, it's really difficult for business to be able to get make the same amount of money, because business loans, let's say, would be 2.5 million Indian rupees, and student loan maybe just half of that, or even personal loans for someone who's wanting to buy a smartphone would be even much less. So you'll not make equally the amount of money. So interesting thing was that we realized that we need to drop a particular product, and our CEOs and COOs were bullish on consumer product, because B2C is supposedly very hot, right, as compared to B2B product. But then there was data. My best bet is, if it is difficult to convince your senior management by your hypothesis, go with it, collect data, get back to them. We got back to them with a quarter-long data to tell that what is the contribution of revenue done by the B2B segment versus what was the contribution in B2C segment. Interestingly, it was hugely different, hugely inclined towards B2B, where we made a lot of money. Also, we added what is the amount of money we actually ended up spending to make that amount of money. The ROI was the key. So I would say, I would go back to one of my slides, and I would say data matters. So data wins. We beat your CEO, in fact, data would always win. And to that, I would also add metrics. So always understand, if there is a request that comes to you, make it a point that you ask, what is the business metric that we are trying to move? And if you're not convinced, come back with data and tell that it didn't move, or it would probably not move. And that is the luxury of data, of having data, and also the disadvantage of not having one. The no's actually become easy. I would go to the next question. I'm assuming this is answered. Mohan. Vinay, how do we prioritize user pain points? I mean, Vinay, it's a very straightforward answer and also very cliched, but I would still, anyways say it. So, user pain points, the best way to identify is hidden in what actually the user is trying to do. So, I'll take an example. So, I'll go back to the Netflix example. So, if somebody is using Netflix, let's say, trying to watch some content there, but they spend, say, 30% of time browsing through content, and then eventually land up into a video, and they play it. When in video, say on certain occasions, they would fast forward the video, stop the video, pause the video, or do a number of things. So now if I look at searching a content is a problem, or is a pain point, to be able to find the right thing. After you're viewing it, to be able to look, to be able to conveniently maneuver controls like increasing volume, fast forwarding it, rewinding it, all of that is a second set of problem. As a product manager, always understand what most of your customers find challenging, and what is stopping your customer to doing that one action that matters. So for example, and that is how I would prioritize. That is how I actually prioritize customer pain points. So for understand, if your customer is not able to find your e-commerce website on the web, then that is one problem. Versus if 1,000 customers find your website, but only 900 of them just never click to the payment page, then that's your problem. So understand where actually the gain for the business lie, and therefore the pain for the customers exist, and try to map that and understand which is the one that you should prioritize first. If if most of your customers are not able to find you, then you will have to solve for the SEO part. But if you are Amazon.com, everybody finds you, then you really need to solve the payment part, so that payment or clicking that, fast pay becomes like super easy. Vinay, if I have answered this, I'd go to Ayushi's question, which is, how did you choose to move from being an entrepreneur to being a product manager? What differences did you observe between the two? So Ayushi, I've always heard this term that product managers are mini CEO, and mine was a very small company based out of Gurgaon. It was 25 people, and we were trying to solve O2O payments or digital payments in India. And to an extent that we were, in 2014, we were probably the first company or one among the first two, three who introduced QR code based scanning and making offline payments. And I'm proud to say I did it before a number of other big players who are doing it today. So for me, let's talk about what it is common between a product manager and an entrepreneur. So both of them are intent on trying to solve a problem, and both of them are solving a problem for a customer that is facing that challenge. For an entrepreneur, there is also a parallel incentive to be able to create wealth. It could be make revenues. It could be to create jobs. But for a product manager, the meeting grounds are, they're both trying to solve a problem for a specific customer. And yes, so for me, from being an engineer and a product manager, then to becoming an entrepreneur, was just trying to extend my love for problem solving to bring in the aspect of being able to help the society, create jobs, or do something larger that actually makes more meaning. So that was my motivation. Regarding what differences did I observe between the two? Yeah, I mean, so let's just say that an entrepreneur can, and then mostly is a product manager, but not every product manager is an entrepreneur. So probably you don't just take initiatives, you personally get impacted by the decisions you make. So that's one big difference. And therefore you are much more cautious as an entrepreneur when you make choices. What books and online content do you recommend for honing product management skills? Good one, Pranav. There is actually a lot of content. So I mean, it's sort of become difficult to point out to the right stuff that one should read. But I would, really recommend few things that you can read. In fact, everybody should rather read. There is one blog I've been recently introduced to. It is called fs.blog by the Knowledge Project. That's also a podcast. I would strongly recommend listening to that podcast and reading that blog. It really helps you developing skills like product sense and on also much of the other skills. If you're planning to, if you're planning to prepare for a product management interview, I believe you must have heard of the book, How to Crack PM Interviews is a really, really interesting book to go about it. And in general, I would just recommend blogs. There is Sachin Rekhi's content. I would recommend you reading to that. That will really, really be great for honing product management skills. What differences from Utsav, what differences do you find between being a PM in India versus outside India work-wise? Okay, so that's an interesting question, because I was just speaking about this yesterday with my wife, and one of the things that we both believe, and especially I feel is critical, is there's a greater work-life balance, and so you do whatever work you do, and you have the luxury of taking time for yourself. In India, I believe at certain point I was always overwhelmed with work. But then again, that was my choice because I really love working, in the space that I am in. But yes, that's one thing. Second is also something that is a difference, but the gap is really closing. That is the quality of work that you end up doing. So as I said, I'm a machine learning product manager here at Booking.com, and I try to with my team I try to create products that use sophisticated algorithms to be solving problems like recommendations, prevent fraud, and to be able to do a number of things like that. And I found it difficult to find that sort of work being done in India. But as I'm saying, that gap is really closing, and really good companies like Flipkarts, Amazons, and many other companies, Indian companies as well, are doing that kind of work in India. So personally, I felt that is a difference. But yes, yeah, I also, because I didn't have the luxury of doing that kind of work with larger companies in India. From Akshat, can you specify examples and in detail for the Spidey sense to roadmap the abstract in your journey in Booking.com? Yeah. So the problem statement was there are people out there who want to, so Booking.com is an OTA or an online travel agent uh, that is for a traveler to allow them to explore and experience the world in the best way they can. And for them, it allows you to book a hotel far off when you're traveling, or to book a number of experiences, your flights, rental cars. And there are people out there who actually want to cheat these people. So now think of it. You really don't know, who would actually want to cheat a traveler. But then this is such an abstract thought. Fraudsters, like how can fraudsters who are typically emailing, hacking accounts, taking over accounts, sending phishing links, how are these people being able to scam the customers? But then you have to define it. You have to understand what different avenues can they use, what all things can they do, and what actually you can do to stop them. So this is sort of an abstract. We defined this particular problem by understanding what are the use cases that typically can help you define a problem or scope a different problem. So one answer, I mean, yes, we used use cases, and that really helps you in mapping an abstract problem into specific things that you can handle. It's also important to know that you would not always be able to solve everything. In the example that I took during the presentation, that Elon Musk must have been bothered about climate change, and he thought that we eventually should flee to Mars. But then he's not solving colonization in Mars. He's not solving how to grow a potato in Mars. He's just right now solving how to leave this planet. So what I'm saying is that you have to scope it. It'll be abstract, it'll be huge. You have to scope it. You have to bring it down to something that you can start with, and then that's where the concept of MVP also comes in. I hope that answers Akshat. If not, do respond. Vinay is putting up a question. In lean startup approach, build, measure, learn, Facebook loop for B2B products, how do we handle continuous involvement and feedback from customers, since in B2B space, we don't have customers to talk to during MVP building? Answer is yes, and definitely no. I mean, yes, there are a number of ways actually you can still do it. So the example I took, where we were building a lending product for everyone, and then we transformed from everyone to actually focusing only on small and medium scale businesses. We actually spoke to customers. We actually spoke to businesses that took loans from us. We spoke to banks. We spoke to facilitators who actually provided those loans. So it's always possible. Yes, definitely. It's also the challenge that what kind of feedback, or what kind of number of customers can you reach out to? Yes, but definitely there are ways. In case there are no ways, where you really want to move fast and you don't have the luxury of reaching out to customers, my best bet would be to rely on analytics. Now think of it that if Zoom is a product which is a B2B product, because I'm not sure that how many of us have individual subscribed account of Zoom, but definitely all of our employers, if we are employed, have started having Zoom account. And there is a way. So for example, Zoom can actually look into this data and understand that company A, normal meetings are 45 minutes. So you definitely have to, create a feature that allows a number of things that happen in a 45-minute long meeting. Company B, normally the meeting size is say 15 minutes, and they take quick notes. So number of features we can allow, maybe add a for shorter meetings, add a notepad where you can just take quick notes, and then those notes get back to your email. So that sort of feedback you can bring in, and therefore that can be translated into things that you want to make. But there are definitely ways. For B2B, my single important bet is analytics, data and analytics, how you can come up with feedback. What do you think about Beam for lending? So let's not think about Beam for lending. Let's think about what kind of user would actually want to use Beam for lending. I mean, the primary, or let's not even talk about Beam. Let's understand what kind of customer would actually use a small, money payment app for lending. Now, the point is short-term credit. So there are, I think, a couple of examples of products in India. I think Simple is one and Lazy Pay is another. So to be able to make a day-to-day daily transaction using a short-term credit limit is that is the kind of product I think that will make sense if Beam was ever to jump into lending. Sanjay, see if that has answered your question. How would you prioritize, from Rajat, how would you prioritize resources when you have two or more important things to do, but can do both? A scenario explaining this would be great when you had to decide what to do. So I think this is a prioritization question. Again, you as a product manager or as any person, in fact, in time, you always have choices. Like you always have choices. Should I read, or should I just say get on YouTube? Should I go run, or should I just rather just do some workout at home? So there are always choices. There could be conflicting choices. There could be the same type of choices. Even when a team is working on something, you will always have choices. The single one, guiding light or the North Star, as I may, that each business should have and always does have a single metric that they care about. And that metric typically, of course, is driven out of revenue, but then engagement. Let's say you were a product manager with Facebook, and you were to introduce a new feature which says, let's say, creating Facebook Lite. It's a product, creating Facebook Lite for countries with low internet bandwidth. And versus second is creating a video application or streaming HD videos more efficiently on Facebook. So there are two different problems, and both needs attention. What would actually help you decide where should you put your resources, where should you put your efforts is who are you creating and what is the business gain. So to be able to create Facebook Lite would mean to be able to acquire a new huge set of customers in countries in India and Southeast Asia and in Africa and many other countries where the internet, I mean, not now, but effectively that the internet is not so great. Whereas creating easy streaming of HD videos would have created a convenience for countries which have the luxury of high internet. Now, if your business is caring about customer acquisition, you would do first. If it is caring about customer engagement from a segment of user that watches more ads and therefore is easy to monetize, and therefore you can make more money, then it's the second. So basically it's about what the business goal is at that point in time and which effort would actually result more into achieving that goal. If that has answered, Rajat, do let me know. Mayur would want to know, what would you recommend for someone who's looking to pursue a career in product management is on technology side? Good question, Mayur. I believe this will help many, and it certainly did help me at a point in time in my life. So I started my career as a Java developer. I did development before actually becoming a product manager sometime. So always be understood. I mean, it's easy to code, debug, deploy. It's easy to do that, and it's fun because you can just put on your headphones and just be focused and do that deep work. But if you are trying to transition into product management, I think the best way is start understanding why are you doing what you're doing. The first single thing that you can really consciously do, even without just say going to a course or reading or listening to people who are into product management, you can do is understand why are you doing what you're doing. If you're writing a specific code, if you're solving a specific problem, try to understand beyond that product requirement document, beyond that software requirement specifications. Try and understand what is your product manager trying to achieve for the business when they're trying to do that. Apart from this, as a regular exercise, I would recommend you to read books by product managers. I'm a bigger fan of blogs because they are succinct, and I mean books or anything read makes more sense if you can just read it soon and then you can start applying it and learning it hands on. So I would say three things. One, speak to your product managers, understand what they are doing and why are they doing, what are their motivations, understand how do they go about their day-to-day progress. That's one. Second, read and listen and watch videos of people trying to do this. And third, and rather the most important, is see if you can participate in a project that requires product management. So there is no replacement for hands-on experience. So see if somebody is trying to create a communication website for people who are impacted by the pandemic. See if somebody is trying to create a small startup and see if you can help them. So always jump into shoes of trying to help people. Be part. Always be working on a side project that helps you learn new skills. So product management is best learned when you're working on a project that requires product management. I started like that. Abhinav wants to ask, how do we prioritize current product enhancement versus new product development? I think it is similar to the question that I just answered by Rajat. Typically, it comes down to the fact, what is the business priority? If the business, if the revenue, for example, is the priority and the revenue from the existing features is stagnant, you need to think of new features. If the customer engagement has sort of flattened, then you really need to improvise on that particular part. So Kuntal wants to say, hi Vaibhav, going by your Netflix example, how as a product manager would you vote against providing the old school category of genre of movies and shows? How it used to be similar in Amazon Prime, etc. I'm not sure if I understood this question, but so if I understand this question, I would say you're trying to ask that how does the strategy by Netflix fare against the strategy by Amazon? I would just say the prime assumption that we are having here is that the same kind of people watch the two. So I would argue even that. So watching Netflix is a separate subscription that only gives you Netflix. It doesn't let you have free delivery or free Kindle books, for example. Amazon Prime, for example, is a separate subscription which gives you a number of different things. So I would say even the user has, if not significant, but definitely has a slight difference. And therefore, their data would have definitely spoken why a particular feature would work on one. Why a feature that exists on Netflix, like when you watch a title and it says similar to this, versus a title that or a tag that actually works for old school category. It also comes into a separate problem, like how do you actually identify these genres of content if that is not given, or how do you identify secondary genres for content? So yeah. So what is your rationale against customers who would want to be more control in hand of customers? It's always in the hand of customers. I mean, your browser gives you suggestions on the basis of what you've been searching. So, I mean, if you have been searching, say, doing a lot of e-commerce or online shopping, then if you go onto Google, it would typically translate into, making recommendations that are links that would lead to websites. Even if you, just say shoes, it will not, just tell you what shoes is. Even if you use an adjective, it might just put you on a similar link. So it's always customer, consciously or not, but it's always customers that are actually deriving what is happening with the features, what is the kind of content are they seeing. Kuntal, let me know if that brings any clarity. Nikhil is asking, for an aspiring product manager, how important it is to learn and know the integrities of tech part, like the coding language and stuff. Can someone who is good with product sensing and ideas become a product manager without knowing much about the technical part of it? Definitely, yes. Definitely, yes. I had two product managers reporting to me at Xiaomi, and none of them was an engineer. One of them studied journalism, the other studied economics. And I would argue that they are probably one of the best product managers I've ever worked with. So yes, definitely, yes. You should always understand technology. So that is different from knowing the technology yourself. You should always, so there's a continuous timeline where product managers exist. On one extreme is the technical side, and on the other extreme is completely the business side. And you have to be the right balance depending on what product are you dealing with. So like for me, example, I am mostly dealing with technology products, so I have to be more on the technical side. But let's say I was trying to break into a new industry, trying to create customer acquisition, I should be more on the business side. So it depends on what kind of problem are you handling, and you should be accordingly placed, and that should be the balance. But definitely, one thing that scores above all for any product manager, their product sense is a skill that is agnostic to your industry, that is agnostic to your technology, that is agnostic to the product you're building. So it applies to everyone. Somebody who's creating a toy that a child would play with, and somebody who's trying to cure cancer with machine learning, say. Okay. Arun is asking, as a product manager for an AI ML product use case, do you define acceptance criteria like F1 score or precision recall as a sign of specific or as a sign of criteria, or do you let the data science team take the decision? How do you roadmap for ML models to start with the ideation that it will show the light of the day, or is there a chance of failure part of scope? Definitely it is. I'll start with the last part. Yes, definitely failure is definitely part of the scope, because not every model that you will potentially create will have a higher precision or recall or may actually do better job. But then that's the fun part, right? You need to continuously explore. So the first thing first, the acceptance criteria, it varies. So in my case, because we are trying to identify as much fraud as we can before they can impact a customer, I highly focus on a high precision and high recall situation. But then of course it's a trade-off. So what we typically do is we fix one criteria, like, so we say that let's fix the recall at 0.8 or 80%, and then try with a number of different models and what is the maximum precision can be achieved. So that is the way we do it. F1 score is good, but yeah, we try to do it the way I said. So yep, that's one. Second is also, how do you roadmap for ML models? A number of things. So for ML models, there are two things. So there are usual activities, that is, I would say, business as usual activities, and then there are innovations. So I would say usual activities are like retraining the model, or trying to doing a feature calibration, things like that. But then there are innovations, trying to see if you can actually move from whatever algorithm type you are. Maybe you can transform to neural network, see if graphs for a specific ML problem, if graph algorithms are the best way to solve them, or you should move to ensemble. Should your say if you're trying to build a model to catch or transactions, fraudulent transactions, and that is much real time, and the data is changing, do you want an adaptive model versus the model that trains in batches? So a number of decisions you can typically take, and that can actually become part of your roadmap. It can even be something that, I mean, if it's a big company, stable product, but it's difficult, and in a huge data product, but it is difficult to really retrain the model and bring that data that is required. Then do you want to actually create a new ETL, extract, transform, and load framework for the entire ML sets? So depending on what the business priorities are, depending on how much luxury of time do you have and the size of problem, you can create a roadmap, and it can have all of these. Vijay is asking, what level of technical knowledge is essential for a product manager? I think I've just answered that. We'll repeat it. Yeah, it depends on the kind of your product, but it's not a mandate, I would say. Shakti has again asked, I would like to join a group who are aspiring product managers who like to, sorry. Vinay is asking, in case of early MVP building for B2B, we do not have customers using products to get data and use analytics. Speak to them, as I said. Speak to them, create groups, create focus interviews, create, as just said, I would say meetups, create a WhatsApp group, understand, see how they collaborate, see how they speak to each other. And that would give you still some decent amount of insights. Some insights is still better than no insights at all. Okay. Mainakini is asking, which language can a non-programmer start learning to move to product management? I'd say English. So I mean, communication is critical to any product manager. I think the best thing that you can do is understand how to communicate best. And that's English. But if you still want to start with anything technical, I started my career as Java. I have an inclination towards that, but I really find Python useful. And because of being part of machine learning teams and products, I think Python has been great learning and great thing to use. I would recommend that. Okay, there is Abhishek who's asking, if I have a side project as a blog, non-profit website, is it good to show in the CV for a PM job? I mean, definitely yes. I would rather say, put it as the highlight, because understand what you are doing out of your own initiative is where your best efforts would go. And that will bring the best out of you. That will have you implement the best of your skills. And then definitely that's a winner. I would say that, if somebody asks me that, create a single pager or rather a half-page CV, I will remove my education. I will remove my all past experiences. I would just keep all the initiatives that I've taken and maybe my current employer. That's true.
I think we should wind up the session here for
Yeah, I
very
think
short time.
there are around 32 more messages. I would be happy
Right.
to take more questions, say offline. You can connect me
Yeah.
with on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'll be more than happy
Yeah.
to.
Vaibhav is already present on Slack. You can put up the questions there. We can continue the conversation. So we can keep on going, but yeah, we are short on time, so let's close it over here.
Yeah,
Vaibhav, I would like to thank you for taking out time and conducting such an insightful session for pragmatic leaders. It was really, really helpful, and I hope every one of us have got off some key takeaways from the session. And yes, we would like to have you once again for a session soon.
thank you. Thanks a lot, Piyush, for organizing this, and thanks everyone for being a kind audience and patient to listen to me.